All right.
Power grabber.
Is everyone ready to begin this evening? All right. Call this work session of the council to order and begin with public comment on non-agenda items. If there's any member of the public that wishes to speak to the council on any item, raise your hand on Zoom or come forward if you are in the room. And City Clerk, if you see anyone on Zoom, let me know. I'm not on the Zoom yet.
I do not, Mayor.
Okay. We'll go ahead and close the public comment period and move on to our first work session, which is seeking input on wayfinding projects. Mr. Gabatuller, welcome.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of council. The first item for the work session is the wayfinding signs and where we are in that and where we hope to get some guidance from you all. And that's kind of a preface to this whole discussion really is, you know, we understand that we're not going to make a budget amendment on this tonight and we're not asking for money. We're rather because we can't, right? So, so we want to make that clear from the onset, but rather, you know, kind of behind the scenes, we've been working on this project a lot, and it's gotten to the point where we want to get some direction from you all to see where we want to go. So just to bring everybody back up to speed, this project, the Wayfinding Master Plan, was completed in 2018, so pre-COVID, and it culminated with the location and the design for 53 wayfinding signs throughout the city. That plan, there's a link to it in the memo. You can take a look. The actual, you know, there's a lot of great information in there, but actual sign locations and designs are kind of towards the end of the plan. There was also some cost estimates that were put into that plan as well, with a high estimate of around $270,000. City Council allotted $75,000 total for FY23 and FY24, and we also had some community partners that were willing to donate as well, or contribute as well, to get this project rolling. So we put out the information. We put RFQ out on our website, even sent them to all the contractors and the sign installers, sign manufacturers, even landscaping companies, anybody we figured regionally that could get this job done. We sent kind of a personal message to with the information, received a few bids back, but all of them really far exceeded what our original estimate was in 2018. And as we all know, a lot changed through the COVID years, and now it's, you know, building materials, supply chain stuff, wayfinding sign manufacturing and installation apparently was not immune to this as well. So there's a couple of numbers there on the second page of the memo that show what we're looking at. So, you know, the project total is more than twice what the high estimate was that we started with in 2018. So, you know, that being said, you know, like I said, we've been meeting with our community partners, two of which are here with us this evening. Trey Sherwood's with us from Laramie Main Street, and then Scott Larson's with us from Visit Laramie as well. Those are the two community partners we had that were active contributors to this project, and supporters still. But I guess where we sit and what this work session is all about is, you know, having background with the Wayfinding Master Plan, what it's all about, what we're hoping to achieve with that. Do we feel like this is something that staff should continue to seek alternatives for? Maybe parse down the number of signs, maybe continue to look for somebody that can do this work for the allotted budget, or should we get into the discussion of scrapping the project for some other type of something similar for the city of Laramie to help visitors find their way around? So I will leave it at that, but I'll turn it back over to you, Honorable Mayor. Perhaps one of our community partners would also like to give some input, and then we can all answer questions. And
Thank you, Philip. Trey or Scott, would either of you like to add to this conversation before we hop into discussion further? Trey, we'll start with you, and then City Clerk, if you let Scott into the room. Thank you.
Thank you. Members of City Council, I'm Trey Sherwood, Director of Laramie Main Street Alliance, and the wayfinding plan was instigated originally from the 2012 Downtown Development Plan, and so this was an initiative to come out of that. I'm so pleased to have support from the city and tourism. At one point, the university and chamber were also at the table, and we've had a lot of false starts. Something that seems so easy, putting up signage, has become so difficult because of labor and costs. But just as a reminder, the idea was to bolster the visitor experience. We know tourism is very important to our local economy, but also just make it easier for our visitors and our new residents, students coming into town, as we know this week, to find our amenities. So whether that's downtown, whether that's parking downtown, their favorite new, local business or a museum, cultural attraction, a park, and so there's this juxtaposition of those of us who travel and use our phones for wayfinding versus those of us who feel more comfortable putting down our device and watching for those street signs as we travel and maybe discovering something new because of that. The wayfinding signage, I think, is also part of an overall brand strategy, and so our shared Loopy L font and blue lettering or blue color that we're all sharing is part of that too. So it's also meant to be like an aesthetic reminder of that you're somewhere, you're in a community that's special, that cares about how it looks and how it treats its residents and visitors. So I don't know that I have a recommendation for you other than I will continue to be a partner. Main Street will continue to be a partner regardless of the direction you guys take. We had originally earmarked $30,000 for this project and have spent $10,000 on 5 signs that are fabricated but have yet to be installed, again because of cost. But we are also in talks to re-sign the public parking lots in the district. There are 5 total, and to make those easier to find, to make those aesthetically more pleasing to use, and are working on, we just wrapped up a naming campaign for those parking lots, and we'll be putting a call out for artists to do artist designed signage based on those wildlife names. So this money will either remain earmarked for wayfinding or will be moved over to those public parking lot signage campaigns. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Sherwood. Mr. Larson, do you have anything you'd like to add for the council?
Sure. Thank you all for the chance to chime in. I think Philip and Trey have both done a pretty good job of summarizing everything. I guess what I would add is that I know from a tourism board standpoint, we're supportive of the project. We've had a lot of discussion. We've been involved from the beginning, is my understanding. I think this has been around as long as I have in this position. So we're eager to continue to support it, but I think some of the points that others have made are valid and have been discussed by our board, right? From the standpoint of costs have really ballooned. Wayfinding does add an aesthetic element when we talk about beautification of, corridors within the community. You are going to enhance some navigational stuff, but from talking to visitors every day, it seems to be a mix in terms of who uses the signage and notices the signs that we have currently versus those who are using their phones or using something like Apple CarPlay that's already integrated into whatever they're driving. So I think there's value and merit in continuing to support the project, but we're really interested to see what council would advise or recommend. And my board has kind of seems to kind of sit in the same place in terms of the potential pros and cons and which direction to run. I know we've been involved from a financial standpoint. I know there's probably some additional funding that we have access to from the destination development funding that we received from the State Tourism Office that could potentially be tapped for this project. But it's really tough when you talk about a financial contribution and you realize that it's 10 to 12K per sign, and you're talking about 50 signs, and you know, what's the best use of that funding for our community? So, or I should say communities for all of Albany County. So I know it's something that we'd like to stay involved with and would like to continue to support, but really looking for some additional direction from council in terms of what the best path forward is for the community. So that's all I have. I appreciate the time.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking time to join us. Council members, does anybody have any questions for any of our guests on this topic or opinions? Councilor Pierce and then Councilor Richardson, please.
Yeah, in terms of the signs, I know there are particular requirements, like the hospital sign has to be blue, right? I'm guessing. I mean, do we have a list of those requirements based on highway or road standards so that we know what requirements we'd have to adhere to, if anything having to do with potentially being able to find downtown, or, you know, I suspect that's not going to be a required type of sign, but it would be nice to know what signs are actually have a design or a description or a requirement, if that's at all possible.
Yeah, so it's my understanding that all the signs are designed to, I don't know if they're required to meet this standard, but they are designed for the MUTCD standards, which are, you know, so that people can read them at certain speeds and all that. So as far as like the material and thickness and stuff, that's we've looked at that as far as bringing the cost down, and those estimates are based on kind of a thinner gauge than the 10 signs that Trey mentioned that we already have fabricated in storage, ready to go, just need an installer to do it. But those are kind of a thicker gauge, and even, you know, making them a bit thinner and a bit smaller, it really, overall, it's like it just doesn't seem to affect the cost that much, unfortunately.
Okay, so maybe not quite to my point yet, maybe I'm not being clear, obviously, but what is that list of the signs that are required by, you know, interstate highways and roads and state highways? What is that list? And I guess the reason I'm asking that is to make sure that either ours that we look at and think about are either different, right? So that people know this is not a purposeful sign, you know, in terms of, I don't mean like speed limits. Does anybody? Yeah.
Yeah, I think, so yeah, they're not required, right? They're not directional signs. I mean, YDOT, I believe that of the 10 we've cited to put in, I mean, most of them are in YDOT right-of-way, so we have to get permission from them. But, I mean, they're certainly, I mean, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at them, but they are totally different and totally to the design of the city. I mean, kind of a color palette that's all the same, and so it's definitely, it stands out. If that's getting, I hope that's getting to your point.
It is. It is. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Pierce. Councilor Richardson. City Manager, please go ahead.
Mayor, if I could interject, I think Philip said, I think, Councilor Pierce, what you're sort of grasping for, but it may have just gone past everybody because it's a big, long acronym, and that's the MUTCD. And I think, Councilor Pierce, that's what you're alluding to, the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices through Federal Highway Administration gives us designations and specifications. For instance, hospital signs have the H and they're blue, right? And there are similar guidelines in MUTCD for non-critical signs like wayfinding, right? So if you read through that wayfinding plan from many years ago, you'll see that the signs would be designed to adhere to those federal standards as sort of, as Philip said, is non-essential. It's not naming a street, it's not sending you to an emergency location, but it's giving you general information about the city. You notice when you drive around the community, those signs typically are kind of, or around the country, excuse me, they're typically brown. They have a similar look, and that comes from those federal guidelines. Am I getting at what your interest was, Councilor Pierce?
Thank you, yes, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. Councilor Richardson, please.
I have a few questions. I don't know if you want me to just answer one. Just go for it. Okay. My first question, when we're talking about one of the options you had mentioned, Philip, was reducing the number of signs. Is there a price difference for installation of the different size signs? Like, do smaller signs cost less than larger signs? Or is it just a flat fee? What are we looking at for that?
Yeah, so we didn't get great bids. I mean, those numbers are based on one kind of that was even remotely within our budget, and the other one was just completely in outer space. So that's the one that you have in front of you on the memo is really, I mean, the bigger signs need 2 poles. And the smaller signs, a lot of them can just be done with 1. So that installation cost can be, you can just half it for those smaller signs that just need 1 pole. But then again, if you look at the 53 signs, I mean, most of them are those larger, they're almost 6 by 6 signs. So they are pretty hefty signs, but that cost is based on the number of signs, the size, and what the installation would be.
And my follow-up question to that is, I see these bids and it kind of blows my mind. And so maybe you can, is this some magical kind of expertise you need to put these signs in? Or is it just a matter of there isn't the manpower to do all of this currently, so prices are high, or something else?
Yeah, that's a great question. Through you, Mayor. Yeah, we've been joking, well, we need to start a sign company, right? Because it's like, why can't anyone do this? But I think it really comes down to this project not being big enough for a lot of the contractors that are able to do it quickly with equipment that they already own to do. It's kind of one of those projects where, no, it's not extremely, you don't need an expertise to put these signs in. We did get engineered drawings, so there's standards for wind loads and stuff that you got to dig a hole so deep, but all the plans we have. So I mean, for us, from our side of things, we're just wondering, largely, that's another option, is to do all of them at once so that we can kind of bid it all out at once and offer that job at that magnitude, rather than doing what we're doing now, where we have 10 signs, get those done, and who knows when we'll get money to do more, So that's kind of the problem, is the magnitude of the job isn't really getting us the quality of contractor that can do it quickly and make it worth it for them.
Okay, I have one more question. Have we looked at the maker space at the university? I know they have one that does more metalworking kind of things. Is that even potential idea to pay students or contract something out at a local level to look at some of these things? I'm guessing you've gone every route, but I'm just, one more question for you.
Yeah, no, again, through you, Mayor, I would say, the signs we have made were made by American Paintbrush, which is here in town. And, we've been working with them on, again, that question of making the signs thinner and other options. We have not yet explored the option of the makerspace. So that is definitely something that we could look at if out of this discussion we are tasked with moving forward with this, given the kind of the brick wall we've hit as far as finding a local contractor that's actually going to install them, right? Manufacturing is one thing, but then installing them too is another animal in itself.
Thank you, Councilor Richardson. Any other questions, Council? Councilor Pierce, please, and then Councilor O'Doherty.
So, completely different subject. In terms of, we're having the new 3rd Street coming, right? And we talked about, something maybe potentially going over the, has this project and that project, have you looked at that together? And I'm specifically thinking of like getting folks so they know, historic downtown, first, right? Have we done that at all with that project to kind of see if we could add some signage that's also welcoming, that's, right?
Yeah. And again, through you, Mayor, we did explore the option and had meetings with YDOT officials about, I can't remember the acronym, but there is one for piggybacking onto a YDOT project, like the one on 3rd Street right now. And the question of, well, can't we include at least the signs that we have for 3rd Street along this project? But it turns out with that avenue, it oftentimes comes out as a higher cost for whatever reason. But that's kind of where we stood with that. And I think it's, whatever liability and the contractors, they want to do what what the current scope is that they bid it on. They don't want to do anything else for whatever reason. But we did explore that option. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilor Pierce. Councilor O'Doherty. Director Sherwood, do you have something to add, please?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. And this may have been before Philip joined us, but when we were working on the 321 3rd Street plan and we approached this topic with YDOT, one of the things they shared with us is that we have sign clutter on 3rd Street, and we actually have exceeded the number of signs that they prefer. And so part of this wayfinding plan was to remove some of the existing signage and consolidate it. And so instead of a post with one sign and then a post with one sign and another, those 3 would go down and those 3 things would be put on one sign and one post, just to clean up the look of that street. So I think YDOT still would like us to do that and to get rid of some of our sign clutter, but just wanted to offer that additional information.
Thank you. Council members, any other questions? I'm wondering about, Council, really for me, and this might be speaking from my own experience a little bit, but I use technology to navigate me around and have typically done the research before I leave to determine where I want to go. And I know Director Larson touched on that a minute ago about it's sort of a mixed bag split, however you want to say it, between how folks get around, but I can see the value of finding new things. I think often, I have on occasion had folks come to town, they went and had coffee downtown or something, but they didn't know a university was in this town. They're people from not Wyoming, right? So they may not even know there's a university. So I can see some value in having those to point people to the footbridge, things like that they may otherwise not stumble on. But for me, the real value of this plan is like this larger aesthetic conversation about really having something that brands Laramie visually when you pull into town, no matter from where or what you're here for, you're going to see oh, this town cares about what's happening, because your directions are presented in a really beautiful way. I thought that was the real value of this, and I wonder about to your point, Counselor Pierce, is you mentioned the Third Street conversation, but we also have an ongoing conversation about gateway enhancements that, sort of like left hand should be talking to right hand on this one. And I would assume, because I know how these things work, right, a lot of the same people show up to all the things. So presumably, they all know what's going on because they're all the same people. But I guess what I'm trying to decide is, and I think this is maybe the point of the work session, but is this a good use of our money? If we have 10 signs and we can't afford to install them, like, are we really achieving anything in the end? I mean, I think it will be beneficial to have clear parking signs, to have that sort of thing going on downtown. Parking downtown is such an acute need that it makes sense to have this like extra touch of branding and extra effort. But I don't know, should we be investing more in our gateways? Should this money roll into our gateways, or should it roll into a fund to help folks renovate their corridor properties? Like, how do we, I think that there's sort of a lot of opportunities for what we could do if it wasn't wayfinding, but I don't, I just worry that if we can't do it well, it may just look piecemeal, and may lose, in 10 years when there's more money to have this conversation again, design aesthetic may have changed, different cast of characters may be in our seats in other positions that are working on this, and then they'll pick green or, not little notched corners, and we'll sort of like lose that through line, right? So, I don't know, Council, I guess more than anything, I'm trying to see if anybody else has opinions here, so that we leave folks with what they came for. Councilor Shumway, and then Councilor Doherty.
Thank you, Your Honor. First of all, we have, I think you said 10 signs. Those must go up. We can't lose that investment. There's another concern that I have, and it's a new sport that seems to have taken hold. There's people love to take really attractive signs or signs that mean something to them and steal them. And when these cost $7,500 to $10,000 a piece, we can't afford that. And so I don't know that it's going to happen, but I'm thinking, that there'd be a lot of people that say, oh, I'd love to have a sign that says, downtown Laramie or something like that. I don't think that should keep us from doing this, but I am concerned with such a huge investment that we can't afford to have them so attractive or so beautiful that they end up in dorm rooms or wherever they go. So.
Thank you, Councilor Shumway. Councilor Doherty, please.
I think one way to avoid that is a 6x6 sign would be hard to steal. So that argues for the bigger sides to me. And also having duplicates of them at the visitor center, like, frameable things about the city of Laramie might be fun, but I would really like to get the ones that are already fabricated up, because it seems like they'll get stale before they go up, like things change sometime. And as far as like, if I'm going somewhere and I'm looking for coffee, I can find that on my phone, but it wouldn't occur to me that there's a rec center, or I might be looking for a commercial workout place and not know that there's a place that has a pool and, all those other things. So I really think it would help us. I loved in Iceland, every time we went to a town, there was a sign showing the whole town and then where the campground was and where the rec center was. And it just was like, okay, now I'm absorbing this place, So I feel like let's get those signs up, the 10 at least, and then reevaluate money for other things.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Councilor. Anybody else have anything to add? Councilor Richardson, and then Councilor Pierce.
I guess I have a similar kind of argument going on in my head, because I think those wayfinding signs do a really great job of building a sense of community, or showing that you're going into a community, and that kind of personality shows through in that. And really, I use my phone to find a place I know I want to go to. But the wayfinding signs, like, I'm never going to use my phone to figure out where parking is or where XYZ things are. And so I think they add an additional little bit, especially if you're kind of wandering in certain areas, which downtown to me feels like more of a place where you wander when you move the other direction, it's more like get in your car, go to the next place. So I do think the signs that we have need to go up. But again, if we can't do it well, I'm with you. I'm not sure. I guess evaluating what would a smaller subsection look like, and could it be, I also don't want to leave one side of town with everything and one side of town not with any signage either. So it's just a huge chunk of money for signage. So I didn't really offer any particular opinion, other than I'm kind of torn, and I'm not real sure.
No problem, Councilor Pierce, and then the Vice Mayor.
So I agree with what our mayor said in terms of using our phones or Google Earth or whatever it's called to get to a certain spot, like to a hotel or wherever you're going. But I wonder, like Councilor O'Doherty mentioned, the things that you don't know, right? Or you don't think about. Like, how do you get to Pilot Hill, right? Which I think could potentially be huge for this community, to have some sort of signage that gets you to Pilot Hill, or even explains what the heck it is, right? Because you see a sign that says Pilot Hill, and if you're from Missouri, you have okay, right? But they don't know that it's X amount of acres, open space for hiking, whatever, right? So they don't know that, and maybe on their trip back from Yellowstone, for example, they may, let's spend 2 or 3 days in Laramie so we can spend a little time exploring Pilot Hill, or gee, we recall because we saw the map, similar to your experience in Iceland, where, wow, they've got a rec center, they've got this, they've got that. And those are things you just don't think about. And so I think if we could somehow get to some of our amenities in town that are maybe kind of hidden to some extent, or people don't think about it, I think that would really help with the whole project or the whole community in general. In terms of the cost, everything's crazy right now, and I doubt if any of it's going to go down in price, so I think we're screwed no matter what. But, it's just kind of the way it is. Maybe we piecemeal it out over a 3-year time span, and take little bites at it.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I was just curious about what the signs are, the 10 signs. And I see you going through something.
This is just the master plan, or the wayfinding report, yeah.
And I didn't look at that before I came, sorry.
Yeah, those 5 signs are ones on like the most high visibility areas in town, like coming in from 287 and then on Curtis Street off the interstate, 2 on Grand, and I believe there was 1 downtown. So we did try to spread it out. Like, we had the meeting kind of phasing it out and said, this would make sense to Council to Micah's point, sorry, for the formality, but I apologize. But yeah, so we were going to phase it out, and those are the ones, but I could certainly get you the locations of the 5 that we have.
Okay, I can look too. And would the ones for 3rd Street help to reduce some of the sign clutter? So are they signs that have destination 1, destination 2, et cetera? I mean, do they have multiple items where we wind up eliminating 3 or 4 signs on 3rd Street?
Yes.
Do they serve that purpose?
I believe I will let Trey answer that, because I was a little unaware of kind of the consolidation piece of the project. So, but no, it's awesome.
Yes, members of council, yes, the signs that we have along the 3rd Street corridor would have at least 3 things, if not 4 things listed. But what you don't see in this cost is there may be some unknown cost to remove those existing signs. We have not gotten bids on that yet, so, but yes, they would reduce sign clutter.
Okay. And so right now we have 10 signs, five signs completed and ready to go.
So yes, Main Street paid almost $10,000 for the existing 5 that were fabricated by American Paintbrush, but then we stalled out when we got the quote for labor to install them.
And those 5, are they intended for 3rd Street and the downtown area?
No.
Only 2?
I think there's 2 on 3rd Street.
And then the other major corridors?
Yeah.
One on, I think, well, one on 3rd.
Mr. Gabatuller, I hate to interrupt you, but
Oh, yeah.
into the microphone for the folks on Zoom. Thank you.
Yes, if I remember correctly, there is 2 on Grand and 1 on 287 coming into town, 1 on 3rd Street proper, and then 1 on the interchange right on Curtis Street.
Okay. Well, I guess my final comment is if we already have made an investment in those signs, it really seems a waste not to use them. I'm a little shocked by the price. And I just wonder, is there a way to go outside the sign community? And is there a general contractor who might be able to install, if they can build a huge building, it seems like they could install a sign, and you already have the plan and the diagrams and everything that's needed. I wonder about searching for an alternative to installation.
Dig a hole. Dig a hole, add concrete.
Add concrete,
Mr. Gabatuller.
have a cherry picker.
Yeah, and through you, Mayor, yes, and the RFP is still on our website. We're still actively trying to engage the contracting and sign-making, landscaping community. But I think to the point I made earlier is that the job itself is just one that is so unique and really so small when you look at it at 5 at a time, that the quote that you have in your memo is actually from a welding company, not even from a sign, not from a sign manufacturer, installer. It's from Stanrod Welding, I mean, here in town. So they're ready to go if I'm understanding the direction council's wanting to go is that we move on these 5 signs, perhaps come up with some type of consolidation effort to do what we can with what we have, with the knowledge that the wayfinding master plan was meant as a holistic document to do all of them. To Mayor Harrington's point, is to kind of create this feel around the whole town. I mean, that was the point of it, but we have to find an alternative, and I heard another alternative, which was kind of a different type of sign, not a directional sign, but more of a map, perhaps, which is something we can also look at, because all these points of interest, could be mapped out on a sign that size, and perhaps would be something to look into as well and place it in a strategic location or two. I think would get to the point of the wayfinding master plan, in my opinion, more so than just doing 20% of it or 10% of it. So.
Please, Vice Mayor and then Councilor Doherty.
Last thing is like Councilor Doherty, when I have gone into a town and those maps are available and you are here, I love that, because I start to orient myself to the town, and then I start to look at, well, what's 2 blocks for me? What's 4 blocks for me? And it gives me a sense of things that I never would have thought to look for, but holistically, it's all in one place, and it helps orient me. to the town. So I always appreciate when I run into those when I'm visiting a place.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Finished.
Councilor Doherty.
The 5 that are already fabricated, is that the first page that shows sign locations, Grand Avenue and South Boulder Drive? Is that what no?
No, I think those are just examples of the different sign types.
Okay, all right.
Sizes, yeah.
All right.
Councilor Richardson, did you have a question?
No, just like to.
Is there a, I guess the first question is, that I have at this point is there a specific target market for the signs? Like who are they aimed specifically at folks like here for travel only? Is that kind of the general idea, like visitors only, or are they aimed at local folks and visitors?
I would say largely the visiting, I would say, unless Mr. Larson or Ms. Sherwood has something to add on that. I believe the idea was kind of that visitor base that comes into town.
Okay. And then the other question I had was, has there been, if we were to look at this so I can see the value in us doing a large project, in bidding this out as like the whole town, see if it's, more affordable, right? All at once. I can see the value in that, but I also wonder about, sort of, I think in a lot of ways, one of the benefits of Laramie is that we figure out ways to get things done, even when we can't afford to. I think that sort of scrappiness of the town is endearing, and it's one of the reasons I stayed. And I don't know if there's a way, I wager there is some variety of liability if volunteers do this work, even if they're trained. But maybe it's not an insurmountable amount of liability. Maybe for the 6x6 signs, maybe. But to sort of when you look at the master plan, seeing some of those mounted to our light posts, that's going to be some, they're probably not called hose clamps, but right, it's like a couple hose clamps bolted to a sign. That seems like something a volunteer who could competently be on a ladder with a drill could probably achieve, right? And yeah, the curmudgeons, exactly the curmudgeons. That kind of a group could effectively do this, right? And I think that might reduce the cost to some extent. It's more work, right? It would be somebody has to manage that and manage the volunteers and manage the how they interpret the engineering drawings, all of those things. But it might be a way to save cost. And I don't know if that's been looked into or if maybe that's not a feasible option. But to me, that feels like a way that we could at least lower that installation threshold. And it's maybe something that we could look into for the initial signs, though I think I remember you saying those were large signs, so maybe that's not an option.
Mayor, yes, I would say what we would most likely run into is the fact that even to install a sign, you would need to be a licensed contractor in Laramie. So whether we could, employ the curmudgeons or a similar community group to do that, I think we would run into that because any sign that goes up, is required to be put up by somebody that's licensed in the city as well.
Okay. And yeah, City Manager, please.
Mayor, if I could, I asked the clerk to pull up the wayfinding signage plan, just to give us a visual. This is a page that gives you a bit of a visual of the signs. But if we can go to the next page, I think it might help council to understand the complexity of the installation in certain circumstances. These are very large, and the placement, for instance, up the poles, on the light poles is very high. Maybe something that needs assistance can't be done from the ground. And as you can see, to Director Sherwood's point, the reduction of the sign clutter, where one sign could effectively direct people to, multiple locations. And like I said, when you travel around the country, you see this stuff everywhere. In Wyoming, too. You see it in Casper, you see it in Cheyenne. So it's nothing that you've not seen before, it's just not here. So I'm not trying to discourage that, that little H sign, maybe some volunteers could go strap that up there, right? But some of them require, mounting poles and that kind of thing. So I think there's some potential there, Mayor, but there's other areas where we probably want professionals.
Thank you, City Manager. Yeah, certainly understood Go ahead, Mr. Taney, and then we'll circle back to the council.
Mayor and council, I just sent Nancy just a couple images of the actual made signs.
Excellent.
We actually thought about bringing one in. The one is so heavy, we cannot carry it. I mean, it's hundreds of pounds.
Yeah, noted.
And so you can't, lifting it up just isn't, a thing. So I'll give Nancy just a moment to pull it up. I think it helps provide a visual and give you just some perspective as to the size there. Making Nancy do this on the fly. She's gonna never let me do another meeting with her. Yes, so fast.
Yeah, doesn't even faze the city clerk.
So that is one of the three, it indicates 3 locations within the community. That's the 6x6 steel gauge. These are the same signs that you see on the interstate, and this is meant to capture people that's coming into the community and have an idea where things are going. If you go to that next one, Nancy, I don't know if you can pull that one up. It's a picture of the topper. We can go to that picture too, it's fine.
Been there. Those are gigantic signs.
They're huge.
That's 2-3 people.
Would that be on 287?
According to the sign, the sign installers, that is hooked on with a lift, a crane, essentially a small crane that usually is on a truck, and it's metal cable secured on the backside. There's special brackets on the backside so that they properly hang and are resistant against the wind. The brackets that go on the actual poles are special as well. And then that other sign, that's the topper, and it's those go on top of that other sign to provide that dimension and that color palette that Trey Sherwood had noted just in her talk about that kind of branding component. So yes, there are a few of the small signs, we're hooking on poles, but this is a majority of the signs right here.
Okay.
So,
yeah, understood.
yeah, I was like dragging those out of my emails, and I'm like, where are they? So I know we took pictures and sent them to everybody when we made them. So.
Yeah, it's helpful. Feet for scale up there.
Feet for scale.
It's helpful.
That was purposefully done.
Yeah, you all are pros, I know.
So.
Okay, yeah, that's understood. Maybe that is not a direction worth pursuing. And then I had one other question, and that was just, has the group gone through and prioritized? If we do have to pare this down, do we have a list of like a checkbox that we can just start working through this? Because it's going to be multi-year, right?
Yeah, and
it seems.
And Mayor, we have not prioritized them per se. What our plan was to do them in phases and just meet as a group as we moved along. So meet with Director Sherwood and Mr. Larson and them as the project progressed. So again, it's part of the holistic approach. I mean, the 53 signs in the plan are not prioritized. They're thought of that they were all going to be completed. But certainly if that is a direction we need to go, we can circle the wagons and figure out which ones kind of are going to be in the most high visibility areas and focus on those.
Okay. Councilor Doherty, did you still have a question? Any other, Vice Mayor, please?
I think the design on the signs is very attractive, and I think this could also be rolled in to our work on Gateway, that this definitely is kind of like a piece of the Gateway. So you've got the Gateway, and then now what? And so I see them as really related, but I think they're very attractive.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilor Richardson, please.
Just to add to that a little bit, I was thinking about Todd's presentation on light pole colors and keeping in mind that that signage as we move forward, because if we wanted a cohesive kind of look to the community that draws people in, it's nice to see what that looks like for us to move forward to make some other decisions as well, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Good point, Councilor. Thank you. Any other members of the council have questions or comments? Well, it feels to me, by way of trying to sum this up, I have really no idea how to sum it up, but it feels like the council's interested in it. I mean, I don't think the support from the council has wavered, despite seeing that. Yeah, I mean, I think that is, it's a number that nobody wants to see, right? But I think what I hear is, and correct me if I'm wrong, council, but an interest in still working on this. And I don't know, I'd be interested to hear from the group if there are other ways that we can have a similar impact with this money. But if the group still feels like this is a direction worth pursuing, then I think, I'm hearing support from the council. And I do think a prioritized list, certainly the council wants the 5 signs that exist to be installed. I think everyone probably agrees there. But moving forward, I think we should have a conversation about prioritizing and beginning to chip away at this list. And I do think this conversation should be dovetailed with the gateway conversation to make sure that this effort in branding is not just an effort in wayfinding, that it really is intended to be somewhat aesthetic, and that aesthetic quality of this wayfinding project should align then with whatever we're doing at our gateways. We should use similar color palettes and things of that sort to ensure that it feels intentional. If we're going to spend, $500,000 on wayfinding, then we should also, all of our efforts should be in one direction. Council, does that feel like a reasonable summation of where we got to? Okay, I'm going to go to Councilor Shumway, and then we'll go to the public.
Just one more thing. I appreciate the contribution that the Main Street has given. One of the directions says, Laramie downtown. I would like to have the University of Wyoming. If we're going to say University of Wyoming this way, I'd like to have them chip in. And I think, there's 3 things: Visitor Center, downtown, and the University of Wyoming. If we start putting in things, like Ivinson Mansion and the Territorial Park and Recreation Center, it's going to get so busy that people are either going to run off the road or they're not going to get it all. So I think we have to be very, very intentional on what we want to feature. And I think those 3 would be great. I think that also, just one comment, the Laramie sign is absolutely beautiful. It'll disappear quickly. Somebody will steal that one for sure, and it'll end up because that Laramie sign that would be something that anybody would want to have.
Thank you, Councilor Shumway. I do think some effort to merchandise that sign by one of our partners should happen. Maybe it'll assuage people from walking home with it. And make sure they're hung really high. Okay.
Electrified.
Yeah, and electrified. There you go. Really? That'll be inviting.
Got a little Western on you here.
Yeah. All right, Council. I'm going to go to the public, and Council we'll come back for any comments afterwards. So any member of the public that would like to speak to this work session, please go ahead and come forward, and you'll have 3 minutes, please. Yeah. And if you're on Zoom, you can raise your hand, and I'll get you in the queue. And I will just need your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes, Mr. President.
Steve Grabowski. My family's been here for 150 years almost. We should have a sign pointing to the university. But people who are coming here looking for the university, they're either going to go to school or they're going to go to a meeting. They've got their phones. All they have to do is dial in University of Wyoming. They'll find anything they want. What they won't find is, especially internet-wise, all the museums, and they won't know that 3rd Street is not old. I know people who live here in town that came to my place and they said, has this been here all along? What do you mean, our place? No, this part of town. They didn't know the old town was there. They go up to 3rd Street and turn and go up north because it's 287, or they go south because it's 287. But they didn't ever come through, and Clark was a little ways off. Now you've moved the the viaduct 3/4 of a mile up, and you've cut off our traffic by about 2/3. Downtowns are where two major highways were, and people looked and saw, oh, that looks interesting, and they stopped and they shopped. Now they just go by us. But Laramie is famous for one thing, except what happened, unfortunately, 25 years ago, the Wild, Wild West. 6 major TV shows in the neighborhood here, dozens of movies, songs, everything else. They come from all over the world. I've counted just the last several years, 60 countries people have walked in my place, and they're all looking for the Wild, Wild West. And what do? We put up landscaping ordinances and shut down the most amazing gas station in the whole world and a laser tag place. Couldn't afford the landscaping and shut down. And all our stuff's disappearing. Our businesses are having a tough time because locals don't shop here because they think it's expensive. I've seen antiques on 2nd Street that I bought for $10 that are $3,500 in Santa Fe. But all this town's so expensive, I'm going to go to Cheyenne. Our image. Let's work on our image. Let's get those people in. Get a sign on the interstate pointing people to the Wild, Wild West, famous town of Laramie, and get them off on 287 on the 3rd Street exit, not on Grand Avenue. They didn't come out here to see Walmart, believe me. Anyway, that's my usual spiel again.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you for the signs, though. I've been waiting for 10 years. They said they were going to be here overnight back then.
Sure, doing our best. Thank you, Mr. Grabowski. Mr. Kriebel? We'll need your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Yes. Norbert Kriebel, Honorable Mayor, City Council. Normally I come here and I listen. I like to listen and hear what's happening, but this one's really got me thinking about things. First off, I know from the Thrive Laramie plan, we had 800,000 tourists coming through Albany County in 2018. And from speaking to Visit Laramie, I know that's gone up to 1.2 million people. We're talking about signs, and we're talking about them as if the signs are really the most important thing. And what I'd like to call your attention to is what's really the most important thing are the business owners. Courageous people who are risking everything to have a business downtown. Yes, we want signs. Yes, we want an image. They want people coming into their stores. That's where we're going to get tax revenue. That's where we're going to get money for the community. So thinking about the signs, I agree. I think the signs are very beautiful. I do think they might disappear. When I heard about the electrification, my plans of taking one of the signs disappeared with that. What I start thinking about is how do we moneyball this? How do we think outside of the box about this? We know that if there's a sign, somebody will take it, but we have an art coalition. Vice Mayor, I heard you say, what if we had a "You Are Here"? We have buildings located up and down 3rd Street. Why don't we have a map of downtown with big red letters that say, "You want to be here"? With it isolated, we don't have to have exactly what's there, but something that says, "Go there." One of the things I'm very familiar working with my clients is a decision trap. And that decision trap is, well, we've already invested money in this. We have to stay with this idea. None of these things that are going to need to be done are going to get cheaper. None of the contractors are going to become less expensive. None of the cranes that are going to be necessary to lower these in place are going to become less expensive. But we have resources up and down 3rd Street that could be used. And if I'm working backwards from the wallets of the business owners that have their businesses downtown, I'm not one of them, so I'm not speaking for myself, then I would suddenly be sitting up at night thinking to myself, what billboard do we use right now? I've seen these signs in the 2011 plan, so we have been, to Mr. Grabowski's point, been thinking about this for 10 years. And if I drive up and down 3rd Street, every light and every sign points away from downtown. So what can we do if we just abandon the idea that we have to have these signs? Let's get there eventually. But what do we do right now that could be different? What buildings are along the way? What billboards exist there that aren't going to cost the amount of money that it takes to do this, but we could do something near term? I'm asking you, and I'm trying to challenge your thinking, to simply say, how do we moneyball this? What is the simple way of doing this if we abandon the structure that says we have to have these signs and simply say, Let's serve our citizens or our business owners. Citizens can come later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kriebel. Any other members of the public wish to speak to the council on this work session? Please. Welcome. Just need your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. Sarah Brown Matthews. I'm here tonight because I serve both on the Albany County Tourism Board, and I'm also the Executive Director for the Pilot Hill Project. I'm really interested in this issue and this challenge that our community has, and I do think wayfinding is really a critical need that our community has, especially as our visitor count increases. When we started thinking about signage for Pilot Hill, we had several goals in mind. We wanted to be very respectful of the community members who had homes adjoining our property, to make sure that we were directing people away from the side streets and the city streets while they were looking for the property. We also wanted to play well in the sandbox, as they say, and make sure that we weren't creating additional clutter on Grand Avenue, on 3rd Street, and throughout town as we helped people find their way to Pilot Hill. I'm still one of those users that might put Google Maps in my phone, but I don't necessarily follow it because I don't trust it. And I do think that our community reflects that in terms of the people that are coming into the community that are looking for the great resources that we have, whether it's recreational resources or our great museums or our downtown businesses. And this is a project that will serve all of those needs. We literally worked a lot. I learned a lot working with YDOT and the city of Laramie in trying to figure out signage to direct people to Pilot Hill. And we put up a few primary signs to get people past Sherman Hills to keep those neighbors happy. But we kind of paused because we really wanted to be part of this collaborative effort for signage in town and be part of the wayfinding project. We have set some money aside, and I feel like if we are thoughtful about some of the different groups that could be reflected in this signage, that they would be happy to come to the table with limited resources and say, let us help replace the cost that we would spend on the sign that should be at the corner of 30th and Grand, and instead contribute it to this effort and have one less small sign along the highway. So I do encourage the board. I've heard a lot of really creative conversations here tonight. I encourage the board to commit to this, the city council to commit to this, but to also not to forget to bring some new thinking into the project, to really look at the master plan once these 5 signs perhaps are installed. Does the content still meet the needs of the community? Should we adjust a little bit? And then to look at groups like ours. I think if you came to us and said, could you contribute, we'd be willing to consider that. I can't speak on behalf of the board, but I would certainly bring it to the board. I think that the beautification project could be an opportunity to also consider some funding for this and make it a multi-leg stool that is funding this project and maintaining it for the years to come. And Joe, I loved your suggestion of the sign being stolen, because I really want to steal that idea and figure out a way for us to sell those so that we can possibly have a little pool of money to work with that could be reinvested in the community. So does anyone have any questions for me as far as my remarks this evening?
Council members, any questions? Thank you for being here.
Thank you for your time.
You bet. Any other members of the public wish to speak to the council on this work session? Seeing none, back to the council for any comments. Council, I think, some of those comments were oriented a bit towards ensuring people know where to get in this town and how to sort of shop locally. I'm certainly a proponent of spending your money locally whenever you can. And, I think I would just add that I think this project could go a long way to doing that. I think it, if done well, and if, maybe done, if we do it thoughtfully, and, I don't know whether it's true or not that no arrows point downtown, but certainly with this project, arrows would point downtown. I mean, I think that it is certainly worth considering. But they also would point to other amenities in our community, because certainly we are tasked as a council, not with representing only our downtown businesses, but every person who shops downtown that lives locally or visits our community, right? And we should be thinking about not just our downtown, but how we move folks through West Laramie, through the west side, how we help folks find their way down 3rd Street. If they really are just going to take Grand Avenue and then go left down 3rd Street, we should ensure they know how to do that in the most aesthetically pleasing way we can. And I think it's worth, keeping in mind our scope is a bit, I think Director Larson mentioned earlier, his scope is Albany County, right? Our scope is City of Laramie. And while I'm a big supporter of our downtown businesses and our downtown, certainly, it's an award-winning downtown. It can't be, we can't be so far off the rails, right? So I think while I support that, we also have to keep in mind the bigger task that we have at hand. And I certainly would like to point folks towards Pilot Hill, towards, sort of the Ivinson Mansion, towards the rec center, those amenities as well. Anyone else? Councilor Pierce, please.
And I would just like to support the map idea. I think, and I've said this before, I think partly because of Pilot Hill. If it were to scale, or kind of to scale, you wouldn't really have to explain much more than that, right? In terms of Laramie's here, and then, right? That tells the story to some extent. So I think that'd be good.
All right, thank you, council members. Staff, do you feel like you have a sufficient direction? I'm not sure if we left you with much of any concrete direction, but.
No, I think the big question was whether there was an appetite to continue on giving the numbers. But I think, some alternatives came up tonight that we really hadn't considered. I think as we move forward with implementing the signs, I think we just need to be aware of the numbers of where we are, that the whole project is not going to get done as it was outlined in the wayfinding master plan, but that we're going to try to find a way to capture the essence of that plan with what we have. So thank you for your input. I think we have good direction to go with. So
thank you, Mr. Gavatuller, for your presentation. All right, council, we are going to close that work session, move on to our next work session, which is the Retail Coach, Retail Recruitment and Development Strategy. Director Taney.
Mayor and council. So tonight we have Caroline Harrelson. She is with the Retail Coach, and it has been a little while since anyone from the Retail Coach has been to Laramie, from COVID to different things. I think the last time we had the Retail Coach complete a presentation, both Caroline and Aaron Farmer, both with the Retail Coach, presented. I believe it was over Zoom. And so felt it was kind of time to bring this council and some of the new members as well kind of up to speed on what the Retail Coach has been helping the city of Laramie specifically with in terms of just our retail recruitment and strategy around commercial development within our community. And so Caroline has a presentation available that she's going to go through, and I think I'm going to turn it over to her.
Yes,
nope, she's on this side of me now.
I'm good, sorry.
And so, click over
Awesome,
there.
good deal. I brought my computer so I could read the small numbers that I hope you have on your screen also as the presentation goes through. And you're going to have to forgive me. I'm still stuck on the wayfinding signage thing because when I was in high school, my oldest brother was in college, and somehow it was found out that he stole a sign somewhere. And I mean, it was a sleepless night in my house. And I was in high school, and he was in college, and there were phone calls, and it was found out that he did it. So it does happen. He had to work a good bit to replace that sign for that community where we didn't even live, but that's the kind of, those are the parents that I was raised with. So anyway, I don't know that he ever wants to drive through that community again, but it's a funny story to me, so it does happen. Anyway, thank you guys so much for letting us be here. We have been working with the City of Laramie, Mayor, City Council, again, thank you for letting us be here, since 2017. And, we started before COVID, and I'm going to get into a little bit of just our strategy and what we do when we start working with the community to recruit retail, and what that process looks like, and how competitive retail recruitment actually is. But just to reiterate, we started in 2017, and those were pre-COVID years. And in those pre-COVID years, Laramie it's a university town. It's also not in the middle of nowhere, but also in the middle of nowhere a little bit. It's a place so unique. I came in Grand Avenue yesterday, and I texted my husband, and I was like, I wish you were here. Just driving into town, you can tell that you guys have so much sense of pride and sense of place, and it's so unique. But also, we've got to figure out what retailers speak. We've got to figure out what retailers speak to your demographics, what retailers speak to your market, your needs, what's sustainable long-term, right? And so for a couple years, we really had to just boots on the ground, market analysis, talk to retailers, see who wanted to be here, talk to current property owners and see why they were pushing away retailers that may want to be here. And then we hit COVID, and so it was kind of a time for everyone across the country. And then coming out of COVID, we have finally picked up steam, and thank you so much to the city manager and Derek for working with us, and some of the improvements that we've been able to kind of finally see come to fruition. And so I'm really excited to see those coming up. So anyway, just kind of a brief overview. I'm going to click on my screen as I click on your screen so I can. Am I doing this right? Here we go. Okay, so our Retail 360 process, working with the retail coach, when we come into a community, we have a proprietary process where we come in and we analyze the market, right? I spoke to that a little bit. Each market is unique. You hear all this stuff about, for instance, university towns. We hear that Topgolf is going into university towns right now. Do you guys see Topgolf coming here? No, right? They're going into SEC towns, university towns. And so you say university town, and you say Laramie, and you've got all these different needs and demographics and personalities and retailers just filtering in. And so it's a market so unique, and that's what's so great about it. But really, coming into this market and analyzing it is like no other, but in the best way possible. So we come into the market, we analyze it, determine retail opportunities, determine what the needs are. The needs of who is in this room sitting in front of me and sitting behind me are 100% different and flip-flopped from the needs of, if I walk towards campus, and I'm probably pointing the wrong way, do not ever tell me to meet you on the west end of a football stadium, because I will inevitably go the wrong direction. But anyway, you need the wayfinding signage, see? If I walk towards campus and I ask them what they want to see, what you guys want to see and what they want to see are totally different, right? And so we need to analyze the market. We've got to determine what the opportunities are, and then also identify development and redevelopment opportunities. As you're driving down Grand Avenue or 3rd Street or whatever it may be, even West Laramie, and Derek and Philip were gracious enough to ride with me today, and Janina's done this with me virtually many, many times, but we've identified so many opportunities for development or for redevelopment, but how do we make those happen, right? And so what are our priority opportunities there? So we really look at those opportunities, and then we identify the retailers and the developers that we want to see. And so it may be that someone on our team from the city side says, I was in Cheyenne the other day and they've got this, that, or the other, or we saw a webinar and this retailer is growing, or we realized that based on your demographics, there are retailers that fit your market. So many different ways that we find the retailers that we target and we recruit. Marketing and branding, just like wayfinding, marketing and branding is everything right now. And so we put together the packages that speak to the retailers based on all of this information, and then we go out and recruit the retailers and the developers. And so that's really the benefit of what the retail coach does. Is I've been with the retail coach for 7 years now, which I think is about as long as we've been working with you guys, but we started working with retailers to create actual relationships with them instead of just cold calling a retailer. My kids get a kick out of this. We drove by Hobby Lobby the other day, and then in a neighboring community, and then an hour later I got a phone call on my cell phone. I said, hey guys, be quiet, this is a work call. And I said, hey, so-and-so, what's Hobby Lobby thinking about this market? And they're going, Mama, you know Hobby Lobby? And I was like, yeah, I do. But, I mean, ish. But we really create the relationships with these retailers to where we know who to talk to, who to call to get the answers that we need. And so a lot of times we'll work with client communities and they'll say, my brother's wife's cousin's sister works at Chipotle. I think if we wanted Chipotle, I might could ask her if she knows who to talk to. And I'm like, we got it. We'll check. The good thing about that is the retailers are giving us the feedback, and so we're able to really reach out to them, and they trust us for the markets that we're asking them about. So if I talk to Chipotle or whoever it may be, Five Below about Laramie, and I say, I think this would be a good market for you guys. What are what's your feedback? It's not a cold call that they're just going to delete. It's not going to go to their spam folder. They know that we're not going to reach out to them for every single client community that we've got, right? We're going to reach out to the ones that matter. And then we're going to get them the information that they need to know to make the decisions. And so really building those retail relationships have been a big part of what we do at the Retail Coach, and then using that to the benefit of our clients. Retail retention and community engagement and coaching and ongoing support, which we've been doing with you guys for a while. Retail recruitment success, a few of these we're still waiting to finally move on in, but oops, I clicked my screen, I didn't click your screen. Let's see, there we go. Home base is one that we know has closed and is finalized and will be coming soon. They're waiting on what they call the party wall, the partition wall to be built on that Safeway site on the far end for them to go ahead and move on. I actually spoke with the Woodbury group that owns that property center this afternoon, and he told me that Home base hopes to be open fall, which here we are, end of this quarter, end of this year, 2023, so they can actually open for business spring 2024. So many variables in that, right, which we all understand, but great news there. Two that we haven't seen open in the market yet are finalizing some things. I heard from the property owner today, leasing agent, that they are still looking at flooring costs. So you guys think you're dealing with wayfinding costs and all those things. They're dealing with flooring costs and trying to get bids for that to meet the needs of these retailers. So many things hold these deals up, but we are finally in a position to see them move forward, which is really exciting. Sportsman's Warehouse is one that really looked at that property at the Safeway Center for a very long time. I don't even know. Time runs together at this point, a very long time. And we were able to just keep them on the hook long enough to where we said, look, how do I say this? Let's not hold out on this opportunity. There are so many other opportunities in the market. Jersey Mike's is another one I was thinking about as I pulled into town yesterday. I remember I emailed Jersey Mike's a couple years ago, or 2020, 2021, and emailed their corporate person, and then I got an email the next day that said, hey, I'm with Jersey Mike's. You emailed so-and-so. She asked me to get back to you. We're doing Cheyenne, kind of finishing out our build out there, completing some things there. Laramie is a so-so market. We think we'd like to be there. What are the opportunities? We're going to do a site tour in a few weeks. I remember sending them the opportunities that we knew of in town that were just kind of in our Rolodex, in our minds of the properties, the profiles that we send out. And then I talked to Derek, and he said, well, Freddy's is coming in, and they're building that space, and there may be a sign up. I don't know if anything is up for Freddy's yet. Well, I can't find anything online. Can you go? And so Derek left work, and he drove by, and he took a picture on his cell phone, and I can still picture that picture. It was a snowy day, and I sent it to the Jersey Mike's site selector. And they visited town that Friday, and here they are. And so just really, really great things happening, momentum to build on, and momentum that we want to keep seeing. So our recruitment strategy for Laramie, because I want to kind of back up now that I've gotten us to where we are and tell you how the Retail Coach does things and tell you what these retailers are looking at and how we're working. I'll try to be brief because I know you guys are ready to get home. But first, we've got to understand the consumer. We need to know who is shopping in the Laramie market. We want to understand your market, and we want to understand what your retail needs are. So, understanding your consumer. This is why I brought my glasses. Oh, here we go. Thank you for keeping up with me. Okay, so understanding Laramie's consumer. So we took Walmart, for example, okay? If you look at Walmart, we took average visits per weekend. We do this by cell phone analysis. I know it sounds big brother. It is what it is. Thankfully, they supposedly don't have my name and information tied to this, but they do know that I have visited, or I do visit certain establishments, and then they know where my home zip code is based on my cell phone, because your cell phone knows where you sleep or where your phone is at rest from 8 p.m. to 6 p.m. or 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. or whatever, right? So your unique visits per week are averaging 28,000 at that Walmart. Over 1 million or 1.5 million visits over this year time frame, and we looked at May 2022 to the end of April 2023, just to give us the best data. If you look at the bottom down here, you're going to see kind of a heat map of where those visitors are coming from, and that heat map shows you, we like to think that we're pulling from all different areas, but as you zoom in a little bit, and you may not be able to zoom in, but as you zoom in, you actually do pull a little bit of Cheyenne, shopping at that Walmart, not as regularly. The heat map is going to show you a little bit more of the red parts are just right around in your area, and I'm going to show you what that looks like in just a second. But if you stay on this slide, you look at the average age, the age that's in the majority of who's shopping at your Walmart. Ages 18 to 29 are 40% of your consumer base at Walmart. What does that tell us? What we already know, we're a university town, right? Well, in a few minutes, we're going to think about what the spending habits of those individuals are. Education, bachelor's degree is 29%. Income, less than $25,000, 27% is the highest income range. So that's what consumers are looking at. So a lot of what we do at the Retail Coach is managing client expectations. Every community wants to be an Apple Store community or a Best Buy community, right? Or a Target community. But when I go to Target with my kids, it's like, they're like, Mom, can we go to Target? Okay, and I'm thinking it's going to be a $20 trip, but we really know it's going to be a $200 trip, or gosh, who knows how much. Can you support Target? Not with these incomes of what your highest demographic is, and that's what your consumers need to know when they're saying, why can't we get this, why can't we get that? But we have some ways to try to think, if we can't get Target, what can we get that still meets that need? So we'll get to that in a few minutes. So I'll click, you click. Okay, great. So, now I can't click. But anyway, so if you look at this, we look at the primary retail tapestry segments of who your top consumers are in the market. And based on that, we break it down by psychographic profiles. Psychographic profiles, we'll get to demographics in a second. Psychographic profiles tell us not only who your consumers are, but what their spending habits are, what their shopping habits, their living habits are. So 35% is the highest, really the majority of who you've got. College towns, next you've got the InStyle, then the Emerald City. This is who your main consumer base is. We like to think that in Laramie we've got this number 6 segment, the great outdoors, right? But that's really only 4.3% of your consumer. So we've actually had conversations with some really great outdoor sporting goods type retailers for some smaller concepts, but when you look at these numbers, we've got to tell a different story of why they should be here versus who your regular consumer is that's shopping 2, 3, 4 times a week in the market. And we do that too. Okay, so if we get down to the next one, your 14B, this was the 35% of your consumer primary trade area database. Scholars and patriots in college towns. Go down to the socioeconomic traits in that third paragraph. Their limited incomes result in thrifty purchases. Do not eat healthiest food, see a doctor regularly, dress to impress with latest fashions of the season, prefer vehicles that get good gas mileage, feel anything can be done online is easier than in person. Well, we'll talk about that in a few minutes because everybody wants a clothing retailer But what do we all buy on Amazon, or what do we try on in person and then go buy on Amazon? So we've really got to realize who our consumers are and what we need here that can support them here. Own laptops, video games, prefer to watch movies, have cell phones, popular activities, backpacking, Pilates, and Frisbee, go out to the movies and out for drinks. If we go down to another segment of who you've got, which was one of your top populations, this 5B, the life group mode, Gen X urban in style, this one actually has a median household income of $75,000. This one can support some of those higher end retailers, but they're still not in the majority, right? College educated, let's see, medium household income of $73,000, connected and knowledgeable, carry smartphones and use many of the features. Well, if we carry smartphones and we use many of the features, then what are we also using? Online shopping, that sort of thing. Attentive to price, use coupons, especially mobile coupons. And I do want to point out that I think Derek has given these to some of you guys, or giving you the links to some of these things that are on that Retail 360, the living and working in dashboard that we've got on the website, but just kind of wanted to break it down and explain it to you a little bit further. So one more psychographic profile that we have here that's in the majority are the Life Mode Group Scholars and Patriots Dorms to Diplomas. Median household income, $16,000. Median age, 21 years old, neighborhood, mix of dorms on campus and off campus, youngest market, impulse buyers, buy trendy clothes on a budget, vehicles are just a means of transportation, value socializing, always connected. I mean, these are the people that my husband complains about, yet he doesn't realize that our children are becoming them. But this consumer base is not spending the money in sales tax dollars, right, to support some of the higher end retailers that we really want to see. So if we go to the next slide, now we kind of understand Laramie's consumer base, right? Now let's understand Laramie's market. So let's look at the primary retail trade area. We took that heat map, so to speak, of what we did at Walmart, of who was shopping in Walmart. We did it for downtown. We did it for the Ninja Fitness, Dollar General area. We did it for several different places where people are coming and spending tax dollars. This is the heat map of where the red parts were of who's spending money in your area regularly. Someone asked me earlier, well, are people coming from Saratoga? Not necessarily on a regular basis, so not 2 to 3 times a week, okay? Now, other times, absolutely, for certain things here and there, but they're not going to be your primary retail trade area consumers. So if you open a boutique downtown, they're not going to come in 4 times a week. Probably not for your Walmart 4 times a week, unless they're commuting for some reason or something like that. So now what I do want to point out is this population of your primary retail trade area, we are able to tell the story to retailers when we say that we think this is a great market for you. You're not looking at, or they aren't looking at, just the demographics of the city limits of Laramie, period, right? And we all know that on U.S. Census data and all those things, they don't count students, right? And so we're counting students in here. We're also counting the surrounding communities. And so we're able to tell this story. Look, in 2020, Census data reported 38,000 for this surrounding area of who we can actually show you based on cell phone data. Hope they don't say my name attached to it, but maybe so, of who's regularly shopping in the market. Good news is there's a little growth, 2023. Good news is there's a little growth, 2028. And then it breaks it down by their average household income, and so on and so forth. So important for retailers. This is exactly what they need to see. Now on the next slide, we're going to show you your secondary retail trade area. Your primary retail trade area are the retailers that actually need the people that live here to shop there regularly. Secondary retail trade area could be more like the travel center out on the interstate, some of the hotels, maybe even Walmart, some other areas like that. Maybe even, we talked about the fly fishing Conoco gas station in West Laramie earlier, but this is going to be the ones who don't need the primary consumers to support them all the time, who have a bigger draw. Now, if you're looking at your secondary retail trade area, which those aren't the retailers that you're really targeting for your average population, but still, sales tax dollars, if we can get them on the fringes and on the interchanges, hey, that's great. Look at these numbers and how they grow. We've jumped from 38,000 or 39,000 to now 157,000 people in this trade area. So that's really, really important, and that's a story that we kind of tell when we speak to these retailers. Average household income even jumped to 95,000, and oh look, now you're pulling down from Cheyenne, you're pulling from Saratoga, you're pulling from some of these other areas. You're even pulling from the ones that go a little more east or northeast to shop, so, northwest to shop. So this just, all of this information is what feeds into the data that retailers use. So now let's look at, we've looked at the consumer, we've looked at, let me get closer, we've looked at the market. What are our retail needs in Laramie, knowing all of these things in the data that we have? Here's where we need our glasses again. Okay, so we want to see, and it's broken down by retail category. We want to see, you've got the description as you can see on the top left corner, 23 demand, 28 demand, growth, and then percentage. What I'm really looking at is the percentage of the growth numbers, because I want to know what the demand is now and what the demand is projected to be in the future as we grow, right? Much to everyone's just ugh, for lack of a better word, if you look at the top right-hand corner, what is probably the lowest projected growth category, and what I've got over here. Top right-hand corner, clothing, clothing accessories, family clothing, men's clothing, women's clothing, children's clothing. Everyone hey, a jewelry store though can kill it, but everyone wants to see a clothing store, right? Everyone says, well, we just really don't have good clothing options. Well, caveat to that, across the U.S., there are not good clothing options. A couple months ago, my husband called me and he said, hey, I think our Amazon account has been hacked. And I was like, I don't think so. Why do you think that? And he said, I'm looking at our bank account, and we had just a lot of purchases the last few days. I think it was hacked. And I was like, maybe not. maybe not. Let me go get some things by the front door. But all that to say, that's the time that we live in, right? And so his trends have changed, his times have changed as we got used to online shopping during COVID and just getting everything from other places. Or just like it said in one of these things with coupons and some of the psychographics wanting to find coupons and then finding it at a better price. Ashamed to say, sometimes I'll go in and I'll try on something somewhere, and then I'll take a picture of it, and then I'll go home and I'll see if I can find it online a little less expensive. Those are the times that we live in. Do we still need clothing goods or clothing stores? Yes, absolutely. Ross, Dress for Less, that's coming in, clothing store. But they also sell other things. So if you look down a little bit on the right-hand side, you've got your clothing and clothing accessories, then you've got sporting goods, then down below you've got general merchandise. Look at this general merchandise. There's actually a 2.96 or 3% growth projected over the next 5 years or whatever it may be in that retail category. General merchandise, when I was growing up, my grandfather had a general merchandise store downtown, right? That's not what we used to think of it as. If you go in TJ Maxx, if you go in Marshalls, if you go in Ross, if you go in some of these, what do you find in Marshalls? You're going to find clothing, shoes, some kitchen things, you're going to find sheets, you're going to find towels, you're going to find some specialty syrup if you like coffee stuff, right? You're going to find a little bit of everything, maybe Halloween decor, whatever it may be. That's where we're going to be able to really meet that need in Laramie moving forward, is finding some more of those general merchandise stores where you can walk in and you're going in there literally with the intention of spending money, whether it be for clothes, and then, oh, while you're here, well, that looks cute, let me pick up that, or the other. A couple of others that I wanted to point out: building material on the left-hand side, 1, 2, 3, 4 down, building material, garden equipment, breaks it down. If you look through this list, there's definitely a need. Building material and supplies dealers, I know that you guys have a wonderful, wonderful retailer of that right now in town locally that's going through a renovation. Sutherland's Home Base, or just Home Base is what they call it now, is coming in, and they're going to meet that need in kind of more of a retail sector instead of just the building supply part. So those projections are going to keep going up, especially as you've got more do-it-yourselfers, or as people are starting to kind of put more into their properties, which is great. Those are focuses. Food and beverage stores, food service and drinking places, those are always going to be a need. We would love to find some more casual sit-down restaurants in Laramie. We know that those are important for you guys. We don't want to pull away from downtown, but your interstate traffic is not going to come into downtown and find a parking spot downtown just to do that. So how do we get some of those interchanges or exits or whatever it may be? How do we put something near the hotels where they can grab a bite to eat and get right back on the road? I noticed when we were driving around today that Cheyenne has a billboard right on your bypass that says, I don't know, Derek may remember, like sit down restaurants, casual eating places 40 miles away. And if you're looking at what you've got or just the signs as you're passing Laramie and then you see that billboard and you're so close to being done for the night, then you're thinking, why not? I'm just going to go a little further, right? That's a huge need that we definitely want to feel. That's something that we really want to put a focus on. And it's not anything that's going to compete with your downtown retailers or your retailers that are in restaurants that are more in town, because it's a completely different demographic. That's where we're looking at that secondary retail trade area versus the primary retail trade area. Site identification is another thing that we really are putting a big focus on, identifying development and redevelopment opportunities in the community. Out by Walmart, we would love to develop some parcels. Not we have no vested interest in any property or any site, but we, as working as an extension of you guys, would love to really see some development out there. It's prime opportunity. As Derek said, everybody goes out to Walmart, right? So why not have some more opportunity around there? So you've got a few more things there. We're really happy with some of the other plazas and shopping centers along Grand Avenue, along 3rd Street. There are definitely, and West Laramie too, there are definitely some opportunities for redevelopment that we really are putting a focus on. How are we doing some of this? Right now that we finally feel like we've gotten a handle on the development or redevelopment of one of the centers in town and the retailers that we know have been there, our next focus and our next shift is really to go to the brokers that we know and we have these relationships with and say, look, we know that you've had Ross interested for years, or Ulta, or whoever it is. Who else do you have interested? But also, who are your preferred developers for some of those retailers? And if we can, just kind of like we've done with that center where Safeway is, if we can get a list of retailers that we know are interested and we work with you, can you help us pitch these to developers? And we will meet them in town, we'll do a market tour, we'll do whatever we need to do. But it's connecting the puzzle pieces. So we'll put the puzzle pieces of retailers together. A developer can then take that to a lender. We'll find the site and we'll do the work from there. So those are all of our focus areas. I know that you guys have a long night, so I'm just going to say those are kind of our next steps. And thank you for letting us be here, and then open it up for questions. And then Derek or Janine may tell me something that I forgot to mention.
I'll say a couple quick things.
Sure.
Mayor and Council, I think one, just the information that Caroline had in this presentation is available to you all, as well as the public, on our Doing Business page of the city's website. Every single year, we update this information. I mean, you can really get into the data. You can see these numbers. You can see these trends. You can see those psychographs. You can see the demographics. My office, Janine uses this. We use this as a city when we get those calls from these developers, these people of interest that are looking at development, because this information is what's important to them in terms of driving the conversation of whether they even want to be in Laramie or not. Remember, businesses don't make decisions based upon they think it would be a great idea to be in Laramie because they like this town. They make it because it's a business decision, and they use that data to help them make those decisions, educated decisions, really. And so I think just, that's all available to the public. It's out there. We want people to use that data. That's why they put it together for us, so that it's readily there. So you can spend a lot of time looking at it. There's a lot there. So I just wanted to point that out. So.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Taney. Council members, any questions for the retail coach? Councilor Shumway, please.
I keep getting the same questions over and over, and I don't have the answer. Who's going into Boot Barn and who's going into Kmart?
So, I think that we've alluded to some things in the incentive package that we put together for the former Kmart Center. We did specify some retailers. We alluded to it earlier. I don't want to say with 100% certainty that they are, because they are still battling out things like flooring and whatnot and negotiating some final terms. But I think many of the retailers that you've heard before are coming to Laramie soon and that you've heard us mention. I would love to wait for them to make a formal announcement once those terms are finally agreed on, but we are closer than we have ever been. And in some of the paperwork that we have, or the city manager's office even, I think has put before you, and I looked back at it earlier today, it's contingent upon them being open on or before like November 23rd, 2024 or something. So there are some different retailers that are in line that are finalizing some things that I think are going to be great, or I know will be great for sales tax dollars and great for the community. And retail is a domino effect. And so once we land these big box retailers and some of the other ones that really meet some unique needs of you guys plus the college community, then the next ones follow. I know that was an around the world answer. I don't want to be the one that says with certainty, because I am not the CEO of XYZ retail company, but I feel confident enough to say that they're finalizing.
Yes.
Thank you. City Manager, please.
Mayor, if I could piggyback on what Carolyn said, Councilor Shumway, we did execute that agreement for the Kmart building. I think that was like December of 22, almost a year ago. But I want to point out for the council, particularly those of you who are, relatively new to council, the data that Carolyn provides to us has been really useful, in particular, like when working with the owners of the former Kmart building, to help us to recruit businesses into that space that fill gaps that exist in the retail offerings in the community. So with respect to the Kmart building, we recruited a retailer we thought could address the gap in existing home-based products, clothing, general products, health and personal care stores. And from a staff standpoint, we've done that purposefully. We're not going to tell a business not to come, but we've purposely focused on the gaps in retail offerings to, be mindful and respectful of the existing retail community and not sort of bringing in their competitors right out of the gate. Not that, competitors won't come, but we've tried to focus our efforts on filling gaps in existing offerings. And that's what we did at Kmart.
Yeah.
The categories I just mentioned.
And to piggyback off of that, one more thing is, and this is not this community particularly, but it relates, is in a similar community, I reached out to a retailer called Shoe Sensation, maybe Shoe Department, Shoe Show, I can't remember, but they said, yeah, we'd love to be there. We need a 10,000 square foot building. Well, I presented to them a site downtown, 10,000 square feet, former furniture retailer, no, we need more parking. Presented to them a former Office Depot, no, we don't like that. Presented to them this, that, and the other. And basically they came back and said, look, we want co-tenancy. And so if someone is going to a homecoming dance or a wedding this weekend or Easter Sunday or church, and they're going into Marshall's or whatever it is to get a new dress, what do they need after they get the new dress? And men, you can answer this even though you're not buying the dress. Shoes, right? Shoes, accessories, whatever you need to go with it. So some of our shoe retailers want the co-tenancy of some of the other bigger box retailers that sell clothing or whatever it may be, because they know they're going in to spend money there, and then they're going to trickle down and they're going to buy this here, then they're going to buy their makeup there, then they're going to buy their makeup there. And so we have a really good idea of who the lineup is going to be. We do think that the Kmart retailer is going to meet some of those needs. And then we do have a good idea of the retailers that are waiting for those to be finalized that may be complementary co-tenancies, so to speak. And in doing that and in holding out on filling that Kmart center and really communicating with the property owner, we they had an opportunity to fill it with many climate-controlled storage users or different users that would not bring sales tax dollars. And when you look at the numbers of the sales tax dollars of what these potential retailers will bring, it will really do wonderful things for the community. So.
Thank you for that. Council members, any other questions? Councilor Doherty, please.
I always wonder at these marketing things, like the people that live in Saratoga, they're not going to come here or several times a week, but when they come here, they're going to do all their shopping, and they must have a higher, I think 80,000 is the median income in Saratoga. I mean, some of the richest people in the world have their, this is the closest place for them to shop.
Right.
And so that's probably what expanded that area and made it look a little more attractive because of, like, Walden, Colorado. I mean, this is the mountains dictate, who can get here. So, I feel like one of the car dealers that left because we didn't fit some demographic, and yet probably 50% of the cars out here are that brand of car.
Right.
So it's like some of the frequency, I don't think is necessarily a good measure because
the spending
people,
habits.
Right. Like if you come once a week to do all your shopping or once every 2 weeks to do all your shopping in Laramie, if you live in Saratoga, you're gonna, it's a 100-mile trip.
And certainly, when you look at the psychographic profiles that we broke down, I think 35% of the consumers, the top majority were maybe the lower, under 25,000 income, and then your next highest segment was 75 to 80,000 or above, and then it maybe dropped back down to something else. So those are taken into account, but you also have to think about, we worked in a community, and I cannot think of what that community's name was, but they had a Costco. Basically, all they had, and I hope they're not watching me on Zoom right now, all they had was a Costco. But we heard, and Costco told us at one point, that it was one of the region's highest performing Costcos because individuals would fly their private plane or their prop plane into Costco, load up for the week or the 2 weeks or the month, fly back, and that's what it was. But the demographics didn't support that, right? Well, you've also got to think of your Saratogas are not just shopping here. They're able to shop in other places, and they are using online resources. My neighbor has a Costco membership, and never fails. Once a week, I get a text that says, "Hey, we're out of town. Can you go get our paper towels and our da-da-da-da that they've got on a Costco subscription off of our doorstep and put them in our garage?" And so just online shopping habits have completely changed that. And definitely we're able to see from the numbers that Saratoga is coming. You're pulling this further draw, but they aren't necessarily shopping here and spending the numbers that you would think that they were prior to when everything changed, even more so with COVID and online shopping habits, unfortunately. Now, downtown, when they come into the market and you've got some of your downtown boutiques, then that is totally different. And so that's the story that your downtown can tell, is we can show that they're coming into the market, and they're coming into the market regularly. And when they come into the market, they're not just coming to Walmart. They're coming into our downtown, and they're eating at, where did we eat today? It was so good. 2nd Street Deli. They're eating at 2nd Street Deli, and then they're going to this boutique, and then they're going here, and then they're really going to wherever, this, that, or the other, and this is where they like to bring their family for a cute little day out or something like that. And so there are unique stories to tell for every single retail segment of your market, and that's what that wayfinding signage does, is it points those users to those different segments of your market. And certainly you're able to pull from there, but you cannot base retail sales off of those consumers coming into the market occasionally, unfortunately.
Good question. Council members, any other questions? Okay. Well, I really enjoyed this presentation. Yeah. It was dense, but I think in a very wonderful way.
Absolutely.
So I really appreciate the work you do for us.
Well, we hear the feedback from our contacts with the city, but I've got some business cards. I'd love to to distribute those to y'all, but definitely we would love to hear any feedback on retail sectors, what you want to see, what your neighbors want to see, what the districts that you represent want to see in the market, because we want to recruit what wants to be, or who you want to be here. Managing expectations is a big part of what we do. Every community that we work with wants an Apple store, and they're a Dollar General market. So we may be bluntly honest about why that may not work out, but we definitely want to see, we want to know who you want to see. One thing that we like to do is if we get a no from a retailer and it's a retail segment or category that we think would do well, then we figure out why they're a no, and we pivot and we find 5 other retailers of the same category. So definitely we want your feedback. We work for you as an extension of your team. And thank you all so much for letting us be here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Harrison. It was a treat for us. Thank you.
Thanks for clicking.
All right, council, we're going to go to the public on this work session. Any member of the public that wishes to speak to the council on this work session, please go ahead and raise your hand or come forward if you are in the room. Seeing none, we will close this work session unless council members have any parting thoughts. Okay, we're going to close the work session. Council members, we're on to any updates or comments, and I'm going to start. Let me see who's on Zoom. We've lost our Zoom attendees. Councilor Doherty, any updates?
I can't remember them.
Okay, we'll circle back in case someone pops up. Councilor Shumway?
I visited I attended Traffic Safety Commission, and they had the update that we had on the parking, only a very shortened version of that. Also, they talked about a lot of the discussion was about bicycles and about having, which streets would be best for the bicycle plan that they have. So they're working on things. They, obviously have a lot of people very interested in the bicycles, and then they also are very interested in the parking part of it. But that's just one of the meetings that I attended, and very engaged, very thorough, and it was an interesting meeting. That's all.
Thank you, Councilor.
Oh, also, we added 2 new members to the Laramie City, or potentially to the Laramie Youth Council, which is
great.
We're looking forward to that getting up and going.
Councilor, will those be on our next agenda? Is that the potential part of that?
Yes. Nancy says yes.
Thank you, City Clerk. Thank you, Councilor. That's exciting news. Councilor Pierce, anything?
Not any actual meeting updates, but we are taking applications for new members to the Monolith Ranch Committee. So if you know of anybody, I think that, Nancy, maybe you've got it right in front of you. I think it closes the end of this?
The end of this month.
The end of this month, and I got an email from Cindy Williams this week, like we have 2 applicants, and we have 4 seats. So, and that's a big deal. So I think we might need a little help in terms of recruiting, and maybe an announcement out soon-ish. I don't know if we've sent one through like our Facebook or something.
Mayor, through you, I could double check to see when the last time was we did the individual flyer. But also just of note, for members of the public looking for it, it's the Ranch Advisory Commission going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, City Clerk. Appreciate that. Anything else, Councilor Pierce?
No, that's it.
Okay. I attended a Pilot Hill board meeting last week. They continue a pretty acute focus of the board now is the trailhead at sort of end of Willett Drive. And I think for the councils, by way of an update for the council, the leading idea as it sits now is a vault toilet, which would have to be pumped out sort of on occasion. But the caveat there is that requires an amendment to city code to be allowed. So we may see that come through, that request for modification to city code come through sometime in the coming months. It's kind of a lengthy process that has to go through the Planning Commission and before the council. So, but they have been working with staff. I don't know how that will end up coming forward to us, but just so you know that that is the process they're going through. And it is sort of a tedious process on their end, but the board is working on it. And there's also a position on that board available now. If you know anybody who is interested in serving on the Pilot Hill board, they do have applications open. So I think that is all I have for boards right now. I think I may reach out to a few of you for some spot covering of boards in the coming few weeks. Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Let's see. I attended a Board of Health meeting, and there were no issues brought up at that time, and any issues there had been were resolved. It was reported that our food truck applications have increased astronomically, and so that is putting some extra work on Cody, the person who does the inspections. The Mental Health Board was, Albany County Mental Health Board was scheduled to meet Monday at 10 a.m., but we had a little snafu with the site, and we did not meet. And now that is scheduled for October. And the other thing that I wanted to update you on is, as you all know, when COVID began, we've done a lot of talk about COVID and how much it has impacted us. When COVID was at its height, the partnership between the city, the county, and the hospital, we came together and each entity put out $25,000 to help support the COVID effort for vaccination and incentivizing, for community education and information. And Councilor Pierce and I were working on trying to get wastewater information and a system set up where people could, during our transitional time when we were finally able to come out again, that people could make decisions based on wastewater. And about that time, everything with COVID changed. So at that time, we had $23,500 left from the $75,000 that had been put forth for COVID intervention. And we held on to that and began to discuss things that we might do with that. And in the interim, became aware that the downtown clinic was putting together a mobile unit, and we started talking with the downtown clinic, with Pete Gosar, about that mobile unit this fall going into the community to provide vaccination. We ran that past Ivinson Memorial Hospital, since the $23,000 was technically their money that was left. And they support the idea. And so the remaining $23,500 will be going to the downtown clinic to support vaccination in the fall in our community. And I think this is especially important because, number one, COVID infection rates are going up now. We're doing very well in our community. Our wastewater continues to be green or no detectable trace, but it is moving west from the east as the COVID did. Secondly, a lot of the support to provide vaccination without cost has been removed. So those individuals in our community that have no insurance or are underinsured have less capability of receiving vaccination if they choose that. And this will allow, the support of the mobile unit will allow us them to buy vaccination, to buy a vaccination refrigerator, to reach out to communities and possibly have clinics at Interfaith, at the Soup Kitchen, over at the Lincoln Center, to go on site to make it easier for those individuals to receive either COVID or flu vaccination if they choose. So we thought that that was a good use. I thank Councilor Pierce for your engagement with that whole process, and I thank Ivinson for their support of this.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you.
Councilor Richardson, anything for you?
Yes, I met with folks from the Historical Society the other day to learn a little bit more about what they had presented us with earlier this year. And so that will likely be coming to us again, just a heads up, but they shared some additional information. It was insightful, and I think they will likely move forward with a bit more clear approach to a request for support from us. Additionally, Main Street had a meeting this week, and they will be putting, I should just let Trey talk about this actually, but Petapalooza is this Friday. Just kidding. Week later than this Friday. Go ahead, Trey. What's the actual date? It was the 25th. Is it not the 25th? Sorry.
Members of council, it's going to rain on Friday.
Oh, it's like I thought it was Friday. Okay.
Sorry. So we have moved the event back till September 1st.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't wrong initially. I just didn't understand the rain dance. So that is happening, and as she mentioned earlier, they're doing a lot of work with downtown parking, so make sure you let people know where our new animally named parking lots are. That's it.
Thank you, Councilor. All right. With that, I see no other council members on Zoom, so I'm gonna skip going to Zoom. City Manager, please.
Mayor, could I remind the council that this week, actually tomorrow, there'll be a new officer and life-saving awards, new officer swearing in, and life-saving awards at LPD tomorrow at 1 o'clock if you're interested in stopping by. And then on Friday at 5 p.m., the fire department will also be swearing in new members. And I believe that's here in Chambers. No, it's at Fire Station number
3, I think.
3. Yes.
Thank you, City Manager. All right.
I'm doing my required training tomorrow.
Good for you.
For the audit stuff, right?
One of us will remain on council.
So,
I've got mine done.
you got yours too?
City Clerk, please.
Mayor, just as an update to the training requirement, I did talk to the Department of Audit this last week, and they said due to the high number of folks attending, they didn't anticipate as many as what they have. They have a room of 115, it sounds like, in person, and the 500 web allowance is totally booked. So they will be holding another opportunity in the spring, as well as their approved partners that have agreed to host some trainings that have been approved through the Department of Audit. So there is a website that's available through the Department of Audit that has, like, University of Wyoming has some approved one, WAM, of course, and I'll send you guys that information as the WAM Winter Conference comes up. Those are all approved courses, so be sure to keep your eye on all of those opportunities, and I'll try to keep you informed as they get notification of all those.
Thank you, City Clerk. That's sure appreciated. I made a joke about it, but it is serious. We all need to do it.
Well,
Okay.
and it's like the whole day.
Right, it's quite
It's ridiculous, sorry.
They did say that they're working on hopefully having a web option that you can do in between your job, and stuff, but it's not available yet. So I'll keep you informed if they get that posted.
Thank you, City Clerk.
So I cancel tomorrow?
Yeah, you might save a day. All right, Council, we're going to go ahead and adjourn the work session, and we're going to move into our special meeting, Council. So I'm going to go ahead and just call the special meeting of the city council to order and go to the city clerk for roll call.
Gabriel. Absent. Newman. Absent. O'Doherty.
Here.
Pierce.
Here.
Richardson. Here. Shumway.
Here.
Somerville. Absent. Cumby.
Here.
Harrington.
Here.
We have 6 present and 3 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you, city clerk. I'm going to go to Councilor Pierce for item 2C.
Thank you. I move that we adjourn to executive session regarding personnel, Wyoming statute 16-4-405, lowercase a, Roman numeral 2 and 10.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Pierce, second by O'Doherty. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Same sign? Okay. Council, we are adjourned to executive session.
We need to go off air.
I'm going to give you 10 minutes. Let's be back here at 8:15.
Back here.
Are we going to be here? Is that okay?
Mayor, that's fine.
Okay, back here at 8:15.
We're not going to be on air, are we?
We will not.
No.
No.